Kate Milafalcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Welcome, Tim. My pal
Thank
Tim is
you.
going to help. I'm glad you're here.
I was going to say thank you for having me back. That we weren't
Tim's
thrown
far
out of
away in
the first
Texas.
one.
This is funny because I'm a fast talker and you're a slow talker. I'm married to
I
a
am
slow
a slow
talker.
talker.
You would think I'd know about slow talkers. My kids spend half their childhood going, Dad, spit it out. Opposites attract, Tim. What can I say? So Tim is one of the two people that introduced me to the Spirits book. And we've decided that we're just going to go through it together here and discuss it and see what we can come up with. And we kind of went on so long last time, we didn't even get all the way through chapter 1. At the rate we're going, Tim, it'll be the second coming of Christ before we get through to the end of it.
Or at least the fourth reincarnation. So
do you want to talk about where we were?
Okay, I've marked it that we're starting with number 9. And the question put forth is, what proof have we that the first cause of all things is supreme intelligence, superior to all other intelligences?
Okay, so the answer, the nice thing about this is they ask you the question and then you don't have to think, they tell you. But I don't always agree. Like I told you, I have a bone to pick with some of this, so it's kind of going to be fun. But this is the discussion that we judge the power of an intelligence by its works. And since no human being could have created the natural environment around us, the first cause must therefore be an intelligence superior to ours. I would say, since I can't even figure out how to change a washer in a tap, that it's pretty self-evident that whatever or whoever created this is of a superior intelligence. Do we agree on that?
Yes, we do.
So you became a Catholic as an adult, so I'm not entirely sure what all they tell you, as part of that training. But when we were little kids, we learned, God is the supreme being, omnipotent, omnipresent, infinite. What's the other one? All knowing, all powerful, all merciful, all whatever. But I always had a hard time with that because all merciful, like, I don't know, there's a lot of punishing going on.
Well, see, I would go, we're going to hit one of them walls. I guess it depends on which God you're talking about. Because the God of the Old Testament he just wants to kill everybody. And supposedly the God of the New Testament is your father.
Well, that's not a good correlation for me anyway. So I don't really want another father. Thank you very much. The first one sufficed. Let's put it that way. Paul Wallace is his whole theory is that Yahweh, the angry God of the Old Testament, is really just one of a number of demiurges, kind of subcontractors below the main gods. You know how the Greeks have the Titans and the Olympians, and then the hybridization of those that became what was running around on Earth for a while. So you had the Elohim, right, who were powerful, and they divided up regions of the world so that they could be in charge of those different regions of the world. And Yahweh was one who got the land of Israel, basically. So it's hard to break away from the constructs of the human mind. We don't have an adequate ability to even express verbally or to even comprehend what it means to be infinite and all-knowing and all-powerful. And we are anthropomorphizing every time we open our mouths because the source of creation is not a he or a she or even an it. It's a, I don't know. See, we don't have a word. How would you
I
describe
would, I would. It's going to sound very odd, but it's a accumulation of everything because we are all a part of God. Planets, stars, galaxies, people, space aliens, however you want to term it, it all goes back to source.
it? Well, I don't
But I
think
was,
that's odd. I don't think that's odd at all.
well, but if, because I was going to say that, like growing up Baptist, you know, it was God knows everything, He sees everything, read
Right,
your heart. You know, same words that you use, that's just how they, you know,
right,
how
right.
they termed it. And so you got to, we never got out of the, someone's always pointing, someone's always trying to catch you because they know you're already going to mess up.
Well,
So,
that's
you
what
know,
we
it's like,
got that too.
right, it's that layering of the guilt when the, I think the guilt is, this is going to sound bad, more of a man made construct to hold power over somebody else.
Why would you think that that sounded bad? That's the truth.
Because it sounds like the truth.
It's a painful truth. People do not want to acknowledge this. And I see, I get myself in trouble all the time here because I talk about these things. I'm not going to pretend I'm too old. I have to cut through the garbage and get to the truth. And it's my opinion. What I've observed is that organized religion is a control system. And there aren't a lot of people who study these things who would disagree with that. The people who would disagree with that are the vast majority of believers who never question. You start to think about the constraints that an institution of a religion puts on you, and you realize you virtually have no free will, you have no autonomy, you have no agency over the decisions that you make. You're told this is right, this is wrong, and this is the punishment, right? And how do
Hmm.
they impose it? They exert fear. They exercise fear over everybody. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're going to hell. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, you won't be saved, right? And that's a very Old Testament, Yahweh, the angry God attitude. This is not what Jesus taught in the New Testament. We did the Gnostic Gospels. I did the Gnostic Gospels the last few weeks. And that's what that book is all about, that Gnosticism versus Orthodoxy. The churches that exists now is the Orthodox. Orthodox, in Latin, it means right teaching.
Right.
Like orthopedics means right foot,
Right.
right? That like things are correct, not right, left, correct, wrong. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And Gnosticism is based on the Greek word for wisdom, knowing. So right away, already you see rule of law and intellectual curiosity vying for supremacy or attention. So Yahweh, yeah. If you think of God as Yahweh, you're already at a disadvantage. How do you
Now,
get past
see,
that?
this, honestly, with a good philosophy, and why I say that was because what I was going to mention was it's like, in the old days, back, let's go to Socrates and Aristotle and stuff, they always referred to spirit and that you got messages from spirit, not necessarily spirits, but from this unnameable force that somehow sends the truth down to you. You connect with it. And we take what we were just talking about. You have the church teaching you this is the road and this is how it goes. And yet you have philosophers who are going, just because just because the governor of the city tells me this is what I'm supposed to believe, but I ticked him off the other day, so now he's going to kill me because he's got the control. Give me the cup and let me move on, because, you know,
Yeah, I think that was Socrates' attitude. Yeah, why hang around if this is the way it's going to be? I know, exactly. I know. It's a lost cause. Well, you know, the Gnostics did not believe in hierarchy, a religious clergy. So they didn't have a pope and priest, and all that came from the Roman imperial order. You know, they turned that early institution into a political arm. And it still is today. I thought about that today. Today, for the first time, I saw the crowd at the Pope's funeral. And there was an area kind of roped off for all the VIPs, right? So all the important people in the world who were there. And may I say proudly that our president stuck out like a sore thumb, but that's a whole other story. So all these people who are considered elite, I hate to use the word, but that's what it is. And they have a special place and they get special attention, and they're all backslapping and glad handing and not whooping it up because they're trying to be solemn, but you know, it's another opportunity to network. And I just thought, oh, here we are. Here's a picture of Trump and Zelensky conferring at the Pope's funeral. What's wrong with this picture?
I will have to be careful on how I have to be careful how I answer that, because it's like, it's one of his grand photo ops, because he sat down with Zelensky, like he's going to put him in his place. And we know that's probably not what was talked about. We also want to talk about how he and Melania were stepping on that rug.
I don't know about that. I didn't watch it.
There, where the coffin sat, there's an area rug with 3 ropes around it. And so you were supposed to walk by, pay your respects, but you weren't supposed to stand on the rug. Okay. And that's probably because it's solemn ground, something like that. Okay. That would be one of those religious things that even if you don't believe in, you should at least, as a head of state, honor and not just do what you want to do.
Well, so are you telling me they have this area roped off and he just went across it anyway?
Well, think of a 3-sided square, and then the 4th side is open, so the people walk up on the 4th side, turn, face the coffin, either say a prayer or whatever. And he's over there just because you weren't supposed to stand. That was supposed to be that border, don't cross. And he just stepped right onto the rug. So, you know.
Because the rules don't apply. He's special. It's disgusting. But they're all special. You've got all these people who are, well, they're the ones who scramble to the top of the pile. They're desperate to stay up there. It's apparent. It was so apparent at this funeral, just from that 2-second little thing I saw. Why did I see it? Oh, I know. I was watching a thing on YouTube, something by, I don't know, like one of those 5-minute little bits of news from Midas Touch or somebody, and they were discussing, here he is in all his glory, you know, at the Pope's funeral. So they didn't show everything. They just showed this one little bit. And I think it was, I know what it was. It was being greeted by other people who were heads of state. Zelensky came out into the crowd, and they had big televisions for the people in the crowd. And when they saw Zelensky, the entire group of mourners started clapping for Zelensky. And then Trump came out, and the whole place, the entire city of Rome shut down. It went totally silent. And then people were shaking hands. And I think it was Macron shook Zelensky's hand, and Trump was right beside him, and Trump put his hand out, and Macron just pretended like he was invisible. It was really funny. They just don't even want to, So, yeah, but that's neither here nor there. But I think that this is a great opportunity to talk about the manipulation of belief and the uses of it beyond anything spiritual, because that's what we saw on full display. And we're going to see a lot more of it. It's going to be really, really interesting to see who they pick as the next pope. I have a theory. We're going to find out very quickly the direction the world is going when they announce this pope. If this pope that they pick is one of Francis's guys, somebody more compassionate, more on the liberal side, more, not liberal, but more on that side, more concerned about social justice and human rights, I think that's a symptom of the potential for going in the right direction. But if we end up with one of those hideous authoritarian dictator types, and there's a lot of them, I don't think it bodes well for the future of humanity.
And I'm biting my tongue to keep from saying things, but I agree.
Say it.
Say it? You mean like a Jesuit?
That's why we're here. Yeah. There's no harm in expressing your personal beliefs. You're entitled to believe what you want to believe, as long as you can support it.
Right.
If you're just
if we take Franciscan monk or Franciscan priest, they have a very different outlook compared to some of the Jesuit priests. And it also depends on what their education was. There was a Jesuit priest that I knew that was a lawyer, and everything was by the rote. It had to be followed exactly.
Right.
And yet the one Jesuit that was a psychologist, he would sit down and have conversations on this if you want to talk about it, and probably give new insights to it.
Mm-hmm. And are the friends, I went to school with both of them, so I think this is interesting. My grade school teachers were all Franciscan. And, and I grew up in Santa Barbara that's dominated by the mission. It's a pretty powerful political entity in the town, right? Because it brings in a ton of money.
Right.
So I think that's interesting, because the Jesuits tend to have this reputation. And did you know that the Jesuits and the Franciscans have been at odds with each other for a really long time? When the Spanish, when Isabel and Ferdinand sent the conquistadores to the New World, they sent the Jesuits with them. And the Jesuits screwed up. The Jesuits wouldn't toe the line, and they got sent back home, and they sent the Franciscans because they were more malleable. But I think they tend to be, this is my guess, they tend to be a little bit more of a contemplative order, and a little more on the esoteric side. They're a little bit more Gnostic, a little more Essene, a little more hippy-dippy, whereas the Jesuits consider themselves intellectuals, Am I right?
That's how I would say totally spot on, because it's basically, like the Jewish Council, the Sanhedrin, that would be the Jesuits. Because there's a priest his name is Richard Rohr. As far as I know, he's still living, but he's based out of New Mexico. Has healing center and all this, and he preaches from the heart. One of his first places, he opened up a meeting place over in a slum area, and then invited people in off the streets. Where, and I'm going to use a terrible comparison, I know priests from Austin wouldn't be caught dead doing that because they don't want to deal with those type of people. Because we had people like that walking into the diocese asking for help, and they said, we're just the administrative building, you need to go to Catholic Charities, not sit down, can I get you a cup of coffee or water, here's a wet rag, something like that.
No, I hear
So I
you,
was
Tim.
at
Yeah.
odds with some of the people I worked with because I took it more as a calling than just a job. And that I learned that through several of the priests that were basically examples for me.
Well, we're going to see more of that depending on how this conclave ends up. And here's the thing. I've been saying this for a long time, and I'm so thrilled because I heard somebody say it today. Somebody in the news said it today, and I thought, oh my God, it took a while for them to catch up. There's a huge schism in the Catholic Church, and it's growing. And I believe that the American Catholic Church is going to split off. You're going to have the MAGA Catholics and the rest. And there are a couple of big shot Archbishop Cardinal types in the United States who have been leading this very conservative group. And I know who I heard talking about this today. I was listening to Jared Yates Sexton. Jared Yates Sexton was on my channel a couple of years ago. I covered his book, The Midnight Kingdom. He's an historian and smart guy and a compassionate guy. Today he was talking about the odious J.D. Vance in the Vatican, and who can be directly blamed for events that are unfolding. I'll just say that. But that he's a representative of American MAGA Catholics, people like Steve Bannon. Did you know that he was? Okay, I didn't know he was a Catholic. That was shocking. And J.D. Vance, and these people who are using it as a tool of power, to impose authority over and control over people. They want to drag American Catholics, the entire Catholic Church, back kicking and screaming into the Middle Ages. They want to go back to the Latin Mass. And, that might seem insignificant, but it was an attempt to make religion accessible to people. What does somebody in the Congo, and this sounds prejudiced, and it's not, I'm trying to think of the heart of China, somebody who speaks a completely different language, a tribal language, no frame of reference with Romance languages, okay? And now all of a sudden they're going to church in Latin. Come on. So what John the 23rd did in the early 60s was try to make religion accessible for the common person. These guys want to go back to a time when nobody was allowed to own a Bible because only the elite clergy could have a Bible. They did not want, and then they would tell you what to believe, and they would tell you, well, this is what Jesus said, and they could make anything up that they wanted, right? And so this is the difference between, to get back to the point of our book, it's the difference between a religious view where God is an authority figure and an oppressor and a punisher, and spirituality is to connect you to the cosmos and the universe. This drastically different worldviews. How do we meet in the middle? Because that's what my new book coming up is about. It's about we will evolve when we can get everybody in coordination with this notion that you don't die, your soul is infinite, and we're not what these narrow views of religion want us to believe. We're not going to heaven or hell. That's not even a thing. What do you think about the chances that we're going to get there?
At some point in time, we'll get there. How we get there is going to be a whole nother question. Because you can either choose to evolve and get there on your own, or you're going to be forced kicking and screaming. And being forced kicking and screaming could be the, blowing up the galaxy or something.
Yeah,
and
that's not really. I know you're not advocating that, but that just for the sake of argument, that's really not a successful way of doing it, because you have to come to this yourself. But in order to come to it, you have to take time to be introspective. You have to take time to question what you're being told and make some sort of connection to a larger cosmos, right?
And if I can, I'm going to use myself as an example here. I was, let's put it 8 years old. Okay. This sound like a Golden Girls picture, 1974, Frisco, Texas, in a Baptist church Sunday night. And they were doing one of those save films to, you watch it and it's supposed to make you go down to the front to be saved.
Oh, I don't know about this. They had films?
The premise is that, you're supposed to be called by Christ to come forward, admit your sins, and you want to be saved, prayed upon, and then you'll get baptized and join the church. Okay. This film, 1974, there were bikers. And what I remember is that the guy ran through a barbed wire fence, pardon me, and got decapitated.
Ew.
And then it showed him in hell burning.
Because he was a biker?
And he wasn't saved.
Okay, so let's get to the fundamental issue here. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but saved from what?
Well, to be saved and be one of God's chosen. If he had, when he was offered the chance to be saved, and if he had taken it, then when he got his head chopped off, he wouldn't have gone to hell.
No, I understand that, but I don't understand the original premise that you need to be saved and you need to be chosen. Do you see what I mean?
Well, but that's you're talking a Protestant church. That's how the Baptists work. You need to be saved. Once you're saved, then you're washed in the blood of the Lamb, and everything is hunky dory. Because once saved, always saved.
Yeah, I remember it wasn't too long ago that I first heard that if you are saved, if you profess Jesus Christ, your personal Lord and Savior, and you get dunked in water, you can then just go ahead and sin willy-nilly the rest of your life, and it doesn't matter because you've been saved. Is that right?
That's what they teach, yes.
Well, as you well know, Catholics.
Because see, here's the other side of that. Because that night I was crying, upset, begging not to go to hell. I shouldn't have
child abuse.
I shouldn't have seen that to start with, because I didn't understand what the message was. All I know is that I'm going to hell. And so went down front, all this, they're all, yay, another one saved, all this. Well, being the type of person that I am, a little bit later, I don't know how much, it wasn't much, it is 6 months or so. I kept asking questions in Sunday school. And this Sunday school teacher, and my mom and my dad were also Sunday school teachers. The Sunday school teacher said, sit down, quit asking questions, and you will only believe what I tell you to believe.
Oh my God.
After lunch that day, I told my mother I didn't want to go back to church. Okay.
She must have been horrified. Was she horrified?
She was, and then it wasn't that much longer that something happened to my father with people from church after he had his first back surgery. He never stepped a foot back into that church. He and the pastor and the pastor's family, we had no problem with. It was the other people that ran the church that he had problems with. And I never understood, I never found out what the story was. But years later, I'm starting to question myself, questioning God, all this. And I'd already told my mom once I wanted to be a priest. And she says, fine, we'll send you to seminary and you'll be a Baptist preacher. And it's like, no, I don't want to be a preacher. I said, I told you I want to be a priest. Okay, so that didn't go anywhere. I went to a Catholic church, St. Jerome's in Waco, Texas. And there was nobody in the main area. And I just sat down and I started feeling connected to God. Where I was told when my grandmother was dying, if you are right with God and you pray hard enough, she'll be healed. Well, she died 2 weeks later. So I spent.
Tim, you're falling down on the job.
What did I do wrong that I didn't save my grandmother?
Oh, that's terrible.
And I didn't speak that to other people because it was like you weren't supposed to talk about it. When people died, it was like you had the funeral, you had the covered dishes, and you weren't supposed to talk about it after that until everybody comes to whatever period of time that they will start bringing that person's name back up. So you get this built-in image of when you're dead, and then you're going to be in hell because no matter what you do, you're not going to be good enough to make it to heaven. And then you have other people that are telling you everything's preordained. So even if you get saved, you're going to mess up somewhere. So you're still going to hell. So what is the point of even trying? And then, like I said, I started going to a Catholic church. I had moved away from home. I worked for the state for 10 years, just shut down. They closed out the IT section. Okay. They were outsourcing part of this new corporate type running of the government. So I found myself 6 months later getting a job at the diocese. I don't remember applying specifically to the diocese for a job, but somehow there was my resume. I went to the interview. I got called back within 8 hours of the interview. Would you like the position? Yes. So then I worked on becoming Catholic. And during that process, I would be talking with priests and I would ask them questions. It's like, as an example, we're sitting there in church in Sunday service. And I said, when we're here at the diocese and we're having a little meeting or something where the bishop is talking to us as a group, or we're meeting for lunch as a group and prayer, you can feel this electrical energy in the room going around everybody.
Okay. Did he want you to be exorcised? Yeah, I'm going to call the exorcist here to come in and deal with this guy.
Oh, no. It gets even better. I said, when I'm over here at this church on Sundays, I said, it's nothing, it's dead. He starts laughing because he was originally raised a Methodist. and came into the Catholic Church. And he goes, what you're describing is the difference of someone being called by God and the Spirit versus someone being born and raised in that religion.
And it's sort of just what you do.
It's that whatever speaks, it's that spirit that speaks to you. Okay. So then it's like, okay, good. Well, and then my dad has a quadruple bypass. And my mom is having hysterics. And it's understandable because he's being operated on. She's breaking down, crying, all this. And before I even, like, I was sitting there knitting a sock. And I said, that was the mantle you chose to carry. Now it's time for you to set it down and let someone else pick it up. Those are not my typical words. Well, I go back to work and I tell them about this experience. And there's several people that said, you do realize that's the Holy Spirit talking through you. Okay, for them, it's the Holy Spirit. For us, we call it spiritual spirit guides. There was somebody other than us speaking for a message to my mother.
Well, I would say you're connecting with a larger cosmic knowing. And you can give it any title you want. You can give it the names of saints or angels, or that's
exactly
human. It's just a connecting. Stefan Schwartz would say that you're just connecting with the energy in the field, because he's very scientific,
Well, and like my dad is, after his surgery, he had to go to a rehab, and my mom and my brother were here at the house, and I showed up Saturday morning and told them to come in late so they could have some rest. And I asked my dad, I said, how are you feeling? He goes, oh, such and such hurts and all this. And I said, no, how are you feeling? He starts to cry. Oh, and he goes, why did they bring me back? I don't understand.
Did he have a near-death experience?
Well, they all do. The people that have heart stuff, they come back with specific stories. He says he was at peace on the other side and it was calm. Why was he dragged back?
Oh, which,
my mom didn't want him to die. We didn't want him to die. That's the human side of us.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't answer this for you. And I don't know that I'm the best person to talk to, but I'll go I'll find a priest. If you to a priest, they won't talk to you as a Catholic person. They will talk to you spiritually.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel that was my place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But because he was crying, that tears, which we will learn later in this book, the spirit uses what is called paraspirit to help communicate. So I took that after reading this book before this, that was deeper spiritual communication coming out, because it was coming out from his body.
Well, and
if that makes
emotion,
sense.
You're really feeling it.
Right. His soul is saying one thing while his mind was, I'm hurting this and that. And then his soul is saying, I was fine where I was at and it was peaceful. What happened? Why did y'all bring me back? And what are you supposed to say to that? Just like when he was we found out like 5 years later, after putting in a pacemaker, that he had stage 4 liver cancer.
Oh,
he was 3 more weeks taking his medicine, and then he decided to stop all his medicine. 2 weeks after that, he started going downhill. Everything started shutting down. And he was having issues that weekend, and I'm upset. My brother's upset. My dad's crying, going, what's it going to be like? I'm scared.
Yeah.
And it's And I said, I haven't, at least in this life, I haven't died to come back to tell you what it's exactly like. I can tell you there is no fear, there is love. You will see a light and you're to go into the light. But there will be people like my mother, your parents, all these people that you've loved in the past. They will be there with you. You won't be alone when you cross. And, and I'm all upset. And he took it and I said, you only got what I can tell you. And what I can tell you comes from the heart. It comes from this place that I don't have full words for because it's not my source. But you've asked, so I'm telling you. And then he ended up having to go to a hospice facility and he passed several days later. I couldn't go because I couldn't drive. So I didn't see him except after when they came and picked him up with the ambulance.
But what you told him was so valuable. It was reassuring. He didn't remember his previous near-death experience.
No, because at this, he was drugged. Because at this point, stage 4 cancer, they're giving all this morphine and stuff. So he would be out of his mind, sitting in bed, asking me, "Talk to me, tell me where I'm at. I don't understand what's happening." And that was killing me because I'd never experienced it before. And I felt like a loser because I didn't have the experience to help him cross. I'd never had the availability before to help someone cross over.
But you said the right things. You told him not, that he wouldn't be alone.
I told him what was told to me. I didn't tell him, So this is why this is always important to me. So when we're studying and talking about this is what without this, I don't think I would have made it through those experiences.
Aftermath. Well, this is it's a very reassuring belief system. I think it's a belief system. I don't know. I struggle with the words faith and belief because to me they imply a lack of critical thinking. I don't take things on faith. I have to work through it, and change my mind all the time. So, hey, I hate to commit. But I think you did such a good job, though, to tell him what you said, because actually that's really true. I've told you the story of my grandmother coming to me in a dream, and she told me, and it was the oddest experience because there was no preamble. She didn't show up and say, "Well, how you doing?" and "I miss you," or none of that. It was just, "Helen, when you die, you don't have to be worried or afraid. I'll be there to help you." And she was gone. It was like, whoa, wait a minute. And of course, my first reaction when I woke up was, "Oh God, what am I dying of?" But it is a reassuring thing to hear. And you might not feel like what you said had impact, but as much as he could take it in under the influence of medication, I'm sure it meant something to him and was helpful. See, I think that those sorts of decisions are made before you're ever born. You have an opportunity to exit several different times in your life, in your body, and subconsciously your soul is making these decisions without your conscious knowledge. So correct. why did they make me come back? Well, no, that's not quite the right narrative. You agreed to come back. You don't have to come back. You agreed. We
don't teach about the spirit and the afterlife and all that, so we don't have foundations to understand when we experience these things, for them to, a nice little file folder for it to sit in. Okay, fine. I chose not to exit that time because there's another reason. Because I can tell you that
you have something to do.
Already been dead. One of them before I was born, And then 2 other times I got hit by a car, and then I had been misdiagnosed by a doctor and developed gangrene. So those were, well, and actually 4, because I spent a week in the hospital in AFib, and we couldn't shock me,
Control it.
and we
Yeah.
couldn't like
Yeah.
thoughts out.
So
So
when you have these near-death experiences, were they all basically the same message or basically the same construct? You know what I'm asking?
no, because before I was born, I can't answer that because
Well,
it
yeah,
was my
yeah.
my mother was having the baby blood pressure issue. So, you know, that was no
Eclampsia.
round. 'Cause
Yeah.
the doctor asked my dad, "Who do I save?
Oh
I
my
can save
God.
one or the other, and I don't think I can save both." But he goes, "Try," and that's we both survived. But the other time, I probably should have been a life altering event when I got hit by a car.
You think?
And, and instead, it was stay inside, don't look at the lady across the street, fear, guilt, all the stuff that we're not supposed to be building on.
That's post-traumatic stress. No, that's what that is. That's post-traumatic
Yeah.
stress. Oh, wow. So you got hit by a car. How old were you?
11.
And you ran out in front of it or something?
I was standing in my driveway up on the hump before the mailbox while my brother was tying his shoe. She hit me instead of running him over.
There's just no
If
justice.
he had been standing where I was, he would have been ran over flat. But instead, she didn't see us, and she was used to using our driveway to slingshot into hers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she'd come around the trash truck, aimed for our. And when I woke up, I was laying in the middle of the street with rain pouring down.
Did you have a head
I didn't
injury
know.
then? You must have had a concussion.
We don't know. The only thing they x-rayed was my leg, and then they put me in a cast
Well, if
because they
you
were
were
thinking,
unconscious, then you had a head injury.
well, okay, but see, I saw the car backing up. First of all, I wake up and it's like I'm in the middle of the road. I was up in the driveway. What? I'm trying to come back to what's happened, and then I stand up. She gets out and starts shaking me, telling me I hit her car, and then I fall down, and all you hear are bones grinding.
Oh, God. I
And
could have done without
for
that.
months after that, she would drive by our house creeping if I was outside. I would have to go inside because I was afraid.
Oh, my God.
So I should have learned something from that, but I also should have been helped not to fear,
You
not.
were 11 years old. You should have nothing. Are you kidding me? Oh my God, she should have been strung up. What a thing to do. I'm horrified, but I don't know why I'm horrified. I hear stories like this all the time, children being mistreated and inequities and bullying. And yeah, was she wasted by any chance?
No, she was a deputy sheriff and she'd just come off duty, 12-hour shift.
I wonder what brand of amphetamine she was taking to stay awake at work, because that makes you hostile. Oh my God, it's just ridiculous. Well, but
So that's
I
why
guess that
I associate all this that I've opened up with you back to Spiritism and Allan Kardec. And
no,
it took
right.
me, until I'm 40 something years old to read it because I started reading this back in 2008. That's the first time that I went and
Are you
sat
are
in.
you are you hinting at something here? Because you know how old I am, and it's the first time I've read it. I hadn't even heard of him until you told me about him. And I find his work is so interesting because I really appreciate how this whole format proves what his approach was. It's analytical, and it's from the scientific process. He doesn't want to be bamboozled or hornswoggled or fooled or manipulated. He doesn't want to fall prey to what a lot of people during his time period talked about, which is the charlatans and the con artists. And he doesn't want to do that. But he also is, in the process, he's embracing a spiritual view that's not in keeping with what the prevailing religious view was. We've talked about that, the Catholic Church, right? And that authoritarian God and that strict set of rules. And then the Protestants, which are probably not, I don't know, I guess since the Protestant Reformation started in Europe, I guess it was as significant in France, but that whole concept of needing to be saved and all, that's very, very foreign from the worldview in this book. This is much more like Plato. Would you say?
I would.
It's your job.
That's why when we were talking about number 9, it's like there is a philosophy into this, because the philosophers talked about the spirit, the truth coming down to you from there.
And it's a personal experience.
Right. And if you say stuff like that today, most ordinary societal people would look at you like you're crazy, because you can't turn it to a page in the Bible and say it's from here.
Right. Yeah, you're right, because the big difference here is, do you take the Orthodox route, which is God is this other thing, completely divorced from what humanity is, and in order to communicate, you need the intercession of these hierarchical clerics, And the other way of looking at it, more Platonic, the Gnostic attitude, is that the spirit is ubiquitous and you have to look within because it resides in all of us. You don't look for external authority. You look within for inner knowing. Two really different worldviews. No wonder they didn't get along, totally in contradiction to each other. So we probably ought to continue so that we get to the end of this chat. We only have 2 pages to do. So,
yes. Because now we start the attributes of the divinity.
Which basically what he says is, you can't understand. You're human. You're not going to get it. You won't get it till you evolve. So there's no sense in trying to teach it to you. So I think that's a common accepted view of most people that I'm aware of that go for the more philosophical approach to religion. Is it's a personal journey. I hate to use that word. This is not The Bachelor, but it's a personal journey that you're on. You're on a path of self-discovery.
Well, because I'm gonna skip down a couple, because I was looking at number 13, and it says, when we say that God is eternal, infinite, and unchangeable, immaterial, unique, or all-powerful sovereignty, just and good, have we not a complete ideal of his attributes? And it says, yes, judging from your point of view, because you think that you sum up everything in those terms. But you must understand there are things that transcend the intelligence of most intelligent man, and for which your language limits your ideas and sensations and has no expressions. So we come back to that border of God itself, himself, herself, the source, is so great that our corporeal body minds can't fathom the full existence.
Yeah,
So
we
we
just,
use the
yeah.
best words that we can describe, and even that's just like touching a point on the needle head of what he is or her
Yeah, we
or
don't
it.
have the brain power, right? I mean, that I
Yeah,
can accept that. I can accept that. I feel like I get a headache when I start thinking about this stuff too much. I understand that. And really, it's all what we already talked about. All good, all powerful, infinite. All those things that we would accept. I think without arguing. If you're creating all creation and the universe, you're probably pretty powerful. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I think the next part about pantheism, really, I have a bone to pick with that,
that's
though. You know,
okay. Let's start there because
well, here, let me find the sentence. So they're talking about, where did it go? Where's the spot? Oh, the pantheist doctrine makes God into a material being. So above that, they talk about God is in nature, God is in animals, God is in the environment, God is in everything. And then they make this jump and say pantheists, because they believe that, are making God material. And I absolutely disagree. I think that what they're talking about is that spiritual essence, within the vehicle of the animal, within the vehicle of the plants and the trees, within the vehicle of the earth, the sea, the sky, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that there are spiritual energies. I don't think they're making God material. He's very dismissive of pantheism. And I have a theory. I think it's because he thinks it's just a little too pagan.
and that's probably true. That would be, you could see that. That would be that struggle between the human side and crossing that border.
But do you see what I'm saying about why I disagree with him? Does that make sense to you?
I do. I was looking at the last line where it says the intelligence of God is revealed in his works, as is that of a painter in his picture. So to me, it's the mechanism of creation, because a painter may think about what he wants to paint, or he may be one of those types of painters that you have a blank canvas and you just start and end up with something.
Yeah.
So it's through his works that he reveals himself.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings it back to the earth, the mountains, the animals, all that. It's all
Yeah.
there,
Yeah. And
because
go ahead.
I was going to say, you can register a mountain emits a certain frequency of energy, and that frequency of energy is found in the body. Same thing with like electricity in the heart. The
Yeah.
blood
Yeah.
is water and stuff. There
Right.
are all these things that we can represent in nature. You can be found in our body.
Right. And I think he's making kind of a false assumption here. He's talking about pantheism. Maybe my terminology is wrong. Maybe I'm defining it differently. To me, pantheism is the belief that there is spirit in all things. Now, pan meaning everything, and theo meaning God. That
Right.
spirit of the source of the creation is in all of the creation. It's a part of creation, is a part of the creator, right? So I
And it
don't think
has to
it,
be.
yeah, and I don't think that it works backwards, that you're trying to limit the creator to something material. No, I feel like when I talk about that, I'm talking about the essence, the spirit, the soul, whatever, the
Exactly.
part. Okay, so really just semantics, we won't worry about it.
Well,
What are you
and
torturing
the
that
other
cat
thing is,
for?
do what?
What are you torturing the cat for?
He wanted one of his treats, so I had to get his treat out.
Yes, you do. Poor kitty.
And but I think it also could be it was 1850.
Yeah,
Their
yeah,
understanding, and when we read it, we have a completely different understanding, but because our science has doubled or tripled since theirs.
sure. Because, well, for example, electromagnetic fields, the imaging, X-ray imaging, none of those things was available to the people of his time. And he does talk a bit about that, in that explanatory notes. He talks a little bit about energy and magnetism and stuff. And like I told you, I thought it was kind of funny because it was sort of archaic in some ways. But uh, who's going to be laughing at us in 50 years? Our knowledge is rudimentary as well. So we can't get too arrogant about how much we know, because the more we learn, the less we know.
But if we go back, I'm going to take a leap of faith here. Franciscans, okay, you know how they feel about animals.
Oh, yes, they have a
They
bond. Yeah.
that you treat animals because it has a soul, it has
Hmm.
life in it.
Hmm.
Okay, you had writers and poets and stuff like that that talked about the trees and the rocks that sing and have a soul. So I think the individuals would make that connection, try to bring it across, and then, their ideals may be approved or they get trampled on. And then a
Yeah.
100 years later, somebody else reads that work and goes, I can see it. I can hear exactly what they're talking about. And then
Yeah.
they pass the message on. So the messages get passed, but it's almost it's the in between that sometimes is a long time. That's why mediums need to be help bringing these messages
Yeah.
across so
Yeah.
that we have this grounding.
And having done that book recently about the Gnostic Gospels, I was struck by something. The formation of the early Christian church was this battle between the authoritarians versus the hippies. I'm generalizing quite a bit here, and that's kind of where we are again. We're, New Age versus the New Apostolic Reformation, the Dominionists. God gave Adam dominion over everything on the earth, and so go ahead and hunt. Go ahead and kill things. Why not? You're a son of Adam. Do it. And bond with your children by killing small animals. I don't advocate that, YouTube. I'm copying what I've heard the fundamentalists say. Yeah, I am appalled that battle is still going on, but it is. And
it's because it's a lesson we have chosen not to learn from and grow.
oh
So
God, it's painful.
I know,
Oh my
I know.
God. Because I think it's important to point out. I'm speaking for myself. None of this is an easy mental voyage for me. I mean, I have had to struggle to get to where I am, and I'm nowhere. And I just feel like if I have to do the hard work, everybody has to do the hard work. Come on, let's just be fair about it, right?
Right. It is because, like I said, when I turned 40, I started questioning, is this all there is? And step by step by step, I was slowly illuminated to that there is something greater than myself. And so when I was asked, where's God? And the first time I point up, now it's like, where God? God, first of all, God is everywhere. He's the tree, he's the rock, he's my cat, he's me.
I thought you were keeping God in the attic. Because
The
that's
basement. In a chest.
All right.
My
So next time we get together, we're going to do the general elements of the universe. That's already sounding kind of difficult. So you have to do your homework and listen. I know that you have finals coming up. So should there be a challenge to get this done ahead of finals or whatever, this has been around a long time. It'll still be here when school gets out. So don't feel pressured, okay?
I'm not pressured. You just tell me when and where.
Oh, I'm
or
the one
what
that has
time.
to read it. I haven't read it yet. Uh-oh.
But I will have it read by the time you say, "Are we ready to record?"
Okay. Well, I hope that people enjoyed this little philosophical debate. I don't know, what would you call it, Tim?
I would definitely put it in the realm of philosophical talk.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know that we debated that much. We shared experiences and how they differed, but there's connection.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we don't just take things for granted when it comes to these sorts of concepts. We really need to pull them apart and try to understand them. And they mean different things for different people. That's what's so important. We're all on a different path. Take our individual time, our little detours or whatever. We're all going to end up in the same place anyway. So with that said, thanks everybody for listening to us just run on. And thank you, Tim. I so appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Foil. Oh, anytime.
Bye.
Anytime you want to argue God, I'm your woman. Okay. Let me put this.